And Detective Newman, if you could come forward and be re-sworn for today's court session and take the stand, we'll continue with your direct examination.
Do you swear or affirm that the evidence you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I swear.
And you may inquire of Detective Newman.
Good morning.
Good morning, sir.
Just for the record, state your name again, spell it.
Christopher Newman. Last name is Newman.
All right, we wrapped up yesterday with the defendant's interview.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and as part of speaking to the defendant, did you learn that he was married at the time of this case?
Yes.
Okay, who was he married to?
Debbie Escalera.
Okay, and as part of your investigation, do you also then interview other people that may know potential suspects or witnesses in the case?
Absolutely.
And does part of your investigation also then involve doing subpoenas or issuing search warrants for phone records?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and as part of your investigation, did you obtain, and I know you asked in the interview, you asked the defendant for his phone number. Did you also get the victim's phone number in this case?
Yes.
Okay, and did you also get Deborah Soto-Escalera's phone number?
Yes, we did.
Okay, do you recall what her phone number was?
I believe it's 989.
And for now, I don't have any other questions. Thank you, Detective Newman.
You're welcome.
During your interview with my client, he consented to give a sample of his DNA, correct?
Yes, ma'am. Good morning.
I'm sorry?
I said yes, ma'am. Good morning.
Good morning. And he also consented to a search of his phone, is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And he also consented to a search of his truck, is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and you let him leave with the truck
Yes,
after
ma'am.
the search?
Yes, ma'am.
So he took it home.
Yes, ma'am.
And during the course of your investigation, you talked a little bit with the state about that. You learned that Tanya was also seeing somebody by the name of Bradley Rodriguez, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And you learned that Tanya's mother, Tanya actually lived with her mother and Bradley Rodriguez, right?
I'm sorry. Can you repeat that?
Bradley and Tanya lived at Tanya's mother's house.
Yes, ma'am. Briefly.
Okay, and that Bradley was kicked out of Tanya's mother's house in March of 2018 because Bradley was violent with Tanya.
Yes.
And you learned that Bradley was possibly one of the fathers, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
You also learned that there was another potential father of the baby by the name of Mark Burke, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And you learned through the course of your investigation that Mark Burke actually had a turbulent relationship with Miss Wise, is that correct?
As I recall, yes, ma'am.
And that he had actually abused her and was arrested, correct?
I don't recall if he was arrested for abuse. I can't recall that, ma'am.
Okay, if I showed you your supplemental report, would it refresh your recollection?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Your Honor, I'm not objecting at this point with your approach.
Jury, let me ask you to please step back into the jury room. There's an issue you need to address out of your presence. Please don't discuss the case with each other. We'll be with you momentarily. Jury has exited. Just so I can clarify where I'm coming to, also, this is not directly in reference to what we were discussing at the bench, but I did give this some thought at some point during the trial that the reason I would allow this to, it's much like if it's reverse Williams rule. If the roles were reversed, domestic violence, killing, the history between the parties, it becomes admissible. So, who wanted to inquire of the detective on this point as far as whether there's a public record as far as that arrest?
I just ran Mark Burke with his date of birth for his CCIS, and I don't see any arrest for domestic violence or misdemeanor battery.
Since the jury's out, Detective Newman, What they're trying to figure out is, in your report, apparently, you had some information about that person being arrested for domestic violence. We were trying to distinguish whether that was based on hearsay that somebody told you, whether there's actually a public record of the arrest that you discovered in your investigation. If you know that off the top of your head, which you probably don't based on what you previously said. But that's what they're trying to figure out.
I'm sorry, Your Honor, I don't recall that. I remember there was a fraud case from Port St. Lucie
Right.
that we actually had a report number from. I don't recall any domestic violence, getting a report for anything for that, so.
I've seen the fraud case, and it looks like it was one of us.
So with that, anything else on the proffer? I would sustain the objection because it does look like it's based on hearsay and there's no actual basis for his personal knowledge as far as there being an actual arrest in that regard.
Judge, can I, at the time
Sure.
during your investigation, Mark Burke was under charges, had been arrested for charges with Tanya for a fraud case?
Yes, and I can't recall the case number, but I believe we did get a copy of that. I think it was Port St. Lucie Police that did the case on that.
And they were co-defendants.
I believe they were co-defendants, yes, ma'am.
Did you learn during your investigation that Tanya was afraid of Mark Burke because of that case?
There might have been people saying that, but with the amount of contact she was still having with him and meeting up with him when he still had an active warrant, I didn't really take that as she was afraid of him.
No, I don't want you to misinterpret what I was saying. If you wanted to ask him about that situation,
Yes.
I'm not precluding that because
Yes.
that's a separate motive situation. I just didn't want something to come in that was hearsay of an arrest that didn't happen through the other domestic violence arrest. So I'm not precluding that.
Yes, sir.
And the state's objection wasn't to that. But just to be sure, I don't know if you heard that, there's, as far as the arrest with regard to the fraud situation, that being a separate motive, I'm not precluding that.
Well, and I guess my question about, because I'm looking at the fraud case, and it says that Mark Burke wasn't even arrested on a warrant in the fraud case until August 27, 2018. So she's already murdered by the time he's arrested.
But he knew that the arrest warrant was
Yeah.
out based on the evidence he was hiding out at Tomlinson's.
Or there's an
house.
inference that he knew of the global situation and its
Right.
possible motive involved.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, there's no evidence of that that's been introduced in this trial so far, but.
He's about to introduce that.
Right. All right, so, but the original objection was to the domestic violence arrests, which we've covered. There is no such arrest. So I'll sustain the objection as far as hearsay on that. It appears to be erroneous hearsay information from somebody else. All right, so I think we've at least made some headway clarifying where we are, right?
Yes,
Well,
sir.
Okay.
and I guess, so when I redirect him, are we permitted then to be like, so is there some domestic violence arrest between Mark Burke that you're aware of between him and the victim? And he's gonna say no. Because now the jury thinks that they got sent out of the room after she
Well,
asked this question.
that's up to you. I could instruct them to disregard the question because he didn't answer it in the affirmative. He said, "I don't know."
I know, but.
Yeah, that's up to you.
My concern is obviously the appearance of objection gets sent out of
It's
the room.
just part of standard
All right.
litigation trial stuff that happens.
We'll address what we're
Right,
going to do then. when
right.
we get our case.
Otherwise, you're left with the argument that there's no evidence of that. That was just the question. The classic voir dire that I've heard 1,000 times where, didn't I prosecute you for, I think this is your own voir dire. Didn't I prosecute you for this the other day? No, you didn't. That's the question versus the answer. All right, let's bring in the jury and we'll continue. And Detective, if you could scoot closer to the microphone as well, jurors may have some difficulty hearing you. Please continue your cross-examination.
Thank you, Judge.
You're welcome.
Sir, in the course of your investigation, you learned that Mark Burke had an active arrest warrant at the date of the murder for a fraud case. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And that his co-defendant in that case was actually Tania Wise?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And that Miss Wise was afraid of him because of that case. Is that correct?
Well, there had been people that had said that, but she had had numerous contacts with him after he had an active warrant, and she never turned him in and met with him on a regular basis, so I didn't know how afraid of him she was.
Okay, and when was the last time she had seen Mark Burke, to your knowledge?
I believe when I interviewed Mr. Burke, he said it was the week of her disappearance, and she had performed oral sex on him in his car.
Okay, and I think during your direct with the state, that you said Ms. Wise had been talking to a person by the name of Giovanni Alvarado, that you learned that. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and actually she was supposed to, on the night of her murder, meet up with Giovanni Alvarado. Is that correct?
That's what several people were saying, yes, ma'am.
Okay, and that during the course of your investigation, you also learned that a gentleman by the name of Jared Christie had dropped her off at her mother's house on the night of her murder. Is that correct?
That would be, I mean, that was Mr. Casino, right?
Correct. He goes by the street name Casino, but
Yes,
his
ma'am.
legal name is Jared Christie.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And during the course of your investigation, you got a DNA sample from Bradley Rodriguez Jr., is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And you got a sample of DNA from Giovanni Alvarado, correct?
I believe so, yes, ma'am.
And you got a DNA sample from Mark Burke, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And did you get a DNA sample from Jared Christie too?
I don't recall.
Okay, you don't remember if you got that one?
No, ma'am.
I have no further questions for this witness.
No questions. Subject to recall.
Thank you, Detective Newman. You may step down. You're subject to recall by the attorneys. Please make sure they have contact information for you.